along with its demands for a ceasefire and hostage deal. Among the 6 murdered hostages, the American-Israeli Hersh Goldberg Poland, who was kidnapped by Hamas on October 7th. He was just 23 years young. His parents, who've been tireless advocates for their son and the other hostages, said their final goodbyes at his funeral in Jerusalem yesterday.
Hersh, we failed you. We all failed you. Maybe, just maybe, your death is the stone, the fuel that will bring home the remaining 101 hostages.
For 23 years, I was privileged to have the most stunning honor to be Hersh's mama. I'll take it and say thank you. I just wish it had been for longer.
Goldberg Poland survived in captivity for nearly 11 months. Then he was murdered inside a tunnel underground. President Biden was at his most blunt yesterday when he asked whether Netanyahu's efforts to free the hostages were sufficient.
Mr. President, do you think it's time for Prime Minister Netanyahu to do more on this issue? Do you think he's doing enough?
No.
Israeli authorities believe that more than 60 living hostages and the remains of more than 30 others are still in Gaza right now. The parents of Israeli-American hostage Omer Nutra joined me on the Today Show yesterday, demanding a resolution now. Here's part of our conversation.
It's been time for action for a long time now, and we're just seeing the results of inactivity. So we don't want verbal commitments. We need to see them coming out. We need to see this war stop.
Joining me now, NBC News foreign correspondent Matt Bradley there in Tel Aviv, and NBC News White House correspondent, my colleague Monica Alba. Matt, let me get to you right now if I can. Is there any indication at this time, after the death of those 6 hostages, that these massive protests might change the dynamics on the ground there, the calculation by Prime Minister Netanyahu?
Yeah, Peter, it's a great question, and it's the one that a lot of these people who are turning out to these protests in their hundreds of thousands are all asking. Are there loud voices being heard in the halls of power? And the answer is, of course, yes. They've been taking notice, and we heard from Benjamin Netanyahu finally 48 hours after that first protest last night, and he made it clear he is not going to be changing his position. He said that he was expressing his regret to the families of the hostages who had been murdered. He asked for their forgiveness. But in the next beat, he turned around and started to lecture the Israeli public about why he was sticking to his main goal, one that has been a real barrier to these hostage negotiations just over the past several weeks, not since the last successful negotiation in November, which is his demand that Israeli troops need to stay in what's called the Philadelphia corridor. Now, this is just another word for the border between the Gaza Strip and Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. He said that weapons run in tunnels underneath the Philadelphia corridor, and that is what has been fueling the conflict for years now. He pushed back forcefully against the notion that this was a new demand and said that he had been making these demands for years now, even under previous premierships when he wasn't in power. The fact is that that is not going to placate the hundreds of thousands of people who were out 2 nights ago and the fewer but still substantial crowds who were out last night. The question is, as this protest movement now goes into its 3rd day, is this cause going to attract the same huge numbers that it did 2 nights ago and last night? That's unclear right now because we're really just seeing in these early hours, seeing these protests getting started for the evening. But what is clear and what Netanyahu made very clear last night is that he's not going to be budging on his position, despite the fact that Hamas has come out and explicitly and implicitly stated that they have now had a new policy where anytime the military, the IDF, is bearing down on hostages that are in Hamas custody, that Hamas commandos have the order to shoot and murder these hostages. This was something that they sort of implied and kind of also really stated as explicitly as they possibly could, that they were going to be sending these hostages home in body bags if Netanyahu and his military continue their incursion into the Gaza Strip. Now, that is a game changer, and it's something that could have resonance among these protesters, but Netanyahu has stuck to his position that is only a military solution that will bring back the hostages. That's going to be falling on deaf ears on the streets of Tel Aviv and elsewhere in Israel tonight. Peter?
And Monica, as I was saying earlier, I had the chance to speak to Omer Nutra's Parents just yesterday, they, as you know, had spoken to Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor, alongside the other hostage families. And it's hard to even articulate the crushing pain that they're experiencing right now with their son, roughly the same age as Hersh Goldberg Poland, still being held in captivity in Gaza by Hamas right now. And they have had no proof of life for the entirety of this time, since October 7th when he was taken. There is new reporting, as you know, on the potential take it or leave it deal that the U.S., that the president may offer these two sides. What do we know on that?
Yeah, Peter, and what's notable is that it was the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, who in that virtual call with these hostage families communicated this as a potential option, as one path that the U.S. could take, which would be to put together a final take it or leave it type deal and package to the parties here, to Israel and Hamas, via the negotiators in Egypt and Qatar, and say this is really the final opportunity for the U.S. to lead and be a key partner in the negotiation. So if both sides were to reject that, hypothetically, that would mean the end of American-led negotiations. Now, is the U.S. really prepared to walk away from that position? Is that something that they would really do, or is this more of a pressure tactic? That's a key question that we all have right now, but it is something that clearly has been going on as a conversation behind the scenes, because so far nothing else has really worked. Even when there has been incremental progress, there have been these bridging proposal conversations where it seems like they're inching toward the goal line there, but then there's always some kind of an obstacle. There are still outstanding issues like the Egypt-Gaza border and other things that Israel and Hamas both have not agreed to. So that is what has led to this conversation. And I am told that President Biden, in the Situation Room yesterday with Vice President Harris and with their top national security officials, they discussed this idea of what could this updated final offer look like, when should we present it, and how much time would we give them to tell us yes or no. They still need to figure all of that out. And then more complicated on top of all of that is this relationship currently with Prime Minister Netanyahu. And yesterday, when the president was speaking to us on the South Lawn, he talked about how he's not negotiating directly with the Prime Minister of Israel. He's negotiating with all of these other parties as well, but their relationship, no doubt, has been incredibly tense and thorny. And until that is sort of the next step in terms of a conversation they may have, there's just an open question about what could finally move this needle, because again, it has been completely elusive up until this point, despite the tragic deaths of those hostages.
And of course,
Peter.
where President Biden has the potential to be a legacy-defining issue, he is working, as we are told, to try to find a resolution as soon as possible. Monica Alba there at the White House, Matt Bradley, my friend in Tel Aviv, thank both of you. Earlier, my colleague Ana Cabrera spoke with a former hostage who was released by Hamas after 51 days. Aviva Siegel held back her tears as she spoke about her 64-year-old husband. His name's Keith. He is still being held hostage by Hamas.
I want everybody to just try and imagine what it's like, thrown underneath the ground 40 meters while you can hardly breathe, lying on a very filthy, dirty mattress with no water in the toilet, hardly with any food, and just thinking, when are you going to be dead? So I want everybody to wake up, and the whole world. It should stop. What they are, their conditions are not just like a simple jail. They are there in hell, threatened in such a brutal way. And it's just the most unhuman thing for us humans to know what they're going through and to just leave them there.
The words of someone who knows what they're going through. And joining us now is Richard Haass, President Emeritus of the Council on Foreign Relations. Richard, I appreciate your being here. Prime Minister Netanyahu, as you have seen, is now digging in, at least publicly. Do you see any indication that this mounting pressure, these protests, perhaps from the U.S. and Arab negotiating partners, will force a change in Netanyahu's position?
Short answer is no, Peter. The Prime Minister has his own motives, personal and political, for not agreeing to a ceasefire. I could understand it if by continuing military operations, I thought you could, quote unquote, eliminate Hamas, but you can't. So essentially, he's doing nothing to get the hostages back in pursuit of military goals that simply cannot be accomplished. But the short answer to your question, there's no reason for optimism, no matter how hard the United States pushes. Hamas doesn't want a deal. This Israeli government doesn't want a deal.
So the UK, as you've seen, they are pausing some of their arms sales to Israel. How, Richard, could that affect other countries right now? Should the U.S. consider something similar to that?
I think it's a misguided decision, sorry to say. It's one thing to pause arms sales when Israel is using arms in ways that you believe are inconsistent with humanitarian considerations, the laws of war, what have you. But to pause them simply because Israel won't agree to a ceasefire deal seems to me wrong. It's within the purview of the Israeli government to make this choice. I think it's the wrong choice. Probably half the Israeli population thinks it's the wrong choice. The White House thinks it's the wrong choice. But that's their prerogative. They've got to decide their priorities. I think arms shipment should only be influenced if the Israelis are using arms in Gaza or anywhere else that we believe are inconsistent with the terms they're being provided.
Richard, there's so many competing forces going here. How does the U.S. election play into all of this?
Well, from Israel's point of view, it gives them more leeway. You've only got 2 more months before the election, and it gives Israel a lot of flexibility. I think it limits the influence of the administration here because they are clearly lame ducks.
Let me ask if I can. I want to switch gears very quickly to another headline we've been watching. This is those 2 American Marines who were assaulted in Turkey. This happened on video in broad daylight. It happened yesterday. These were members of a nationalist mob. They were chanting, "Yankee, go home." Here's a short clip of that. Look. You can see that moment where one of those Americans had a bag thrown over his head. Another one who was being held there against his will is shouting, "Help." Fortunately, no one was injured, at least according to the Navy, and the service members later returned to their ship. As we said, these attackers were members of what they call the Turkish Youth Union. This is a group affiliated with the Patriotic Party. For those here who don't know what that is, it's basically a nationalist political party. What does this tell us, Richard, about the broader anti-American sentiment that may exist around the world?
Well, certainly in Turkey. Turkey's long been formally an ally, Peter, but I wouldn't call them a partner. It's a real test to this government, which often is quite anti-American. Let's see what they do with these people. If they let them walk, that sends a real signal. And, every once in a while when people say, "Yankee, go home," my instincts are let's take them up on it. If they're not going to basically create an environment where Americans who are there fulfilling our NATO obligations are not looked after, then we ought to let the Turks stew in their own juices.
Yeah, Richard Haass, we always appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you for joining us here. And coming up in 90 seconds, President Biden joins Vice President Harris for their first joint campaign event since exiting the race. Can the new Democratic ticket build the so-called blue wall with the help of unions and blue-collar workers in those crucial battleground states? You're watching MSNBC. We are live.
At the Make This the Summer event, take a vacation from payments on the most capable Wrangler ever, the most affordable Jeep SUV, the only open-air pickup, and the most awarded SUV ever. Hurry into your Jeep brand dealer and make the most out of summer with great deals plus no payments for 90 days.
Always been active my whole life. Mental toughness was no match for, a maple bacon donut. Donuts were my kryptonite. GLP-1s through row have stopped my cravings completely. Being able to dive, being able to play with the kids and not feel winded is amazing. GLP-1s are like a military mindset and a shot.
Meet the weekly shop that helps you lose weight. Connect with a provider at row.co.
Precise designs, subtle curves, curated upgrades. Custom configurations create a space that's uniquely timeless, yet distinctly personal. Elevated design for thoughtful living. Thuma.
Go beyond the headlines with the MSNBC app. Read, listen, and watch live breaking news and analysis anytime, anywhere. Go beyond the what to understand the why. Download the MSNBC app now.
From commander-in-chief to chief campaigner, Joe Biden is taking on a new role 9 weeks till Election Day. For the first time since stepping aside, the president joined Kamala Harris there on the trail in Pittsburgh yesterday, side by side with the vice president, telling a room full of union workers that he trusts her and that they should too.
She has a backbone like a ramrod. And she has the moral compass of a saint. This woman knows what she's doing. Folks, I promise you, if you elect Kamala Harris as president, it'll be the best decision you will have ever made.
So now the final stretch before Election Day has begun, and in exactly a week, Harris and Donald Trump will be facing off for the first and perhaps the only time on a debate stage. Joining me now is NBC News Washington correspondent Yamiche Alcindor, NBC News correspondent Garrett Haake, and Washington Post senior national political correspondent Ashley Parker. Nice to have a good group together on this topic. Yamiche, let's start as we talk about the vice president. Remarkably, it has been 4 years since she was last on a debate stage. Trump and Biden got a chance to do this a few months ago. Didn't go so well for the president, went a bit better for the former president here. How is Vice President Harris preparing for this crucial showdown?
Well, one, she's really squeezing in all the debate prep she can in between these campaign events, but she's also looking at this with some main goals in mind. The first one, she wants to remain calm, but also needle Donald Trump. She wants to sort of get under his skin, and what I've been told by sources is really expose the true Donald Trump, which is him unhinged, screaming at her, maybe being just sort of not
as they say,
as
the
cohesive.
full Donald, right?
Yes. They also, a number of sources have also told me he mumbles, he gets angry. The idea that Donald Trump did well in the last debate isn't sort of a real thing. They really think that the last debate, while President Biden struggled there, that also Donald Trump was exposed as having his own deep flaws. And she also wants to make sure that people come away really understanding what her vision for America is. So they're really trying to sort of really hammer home the idea that she's going to be a president for the middle class. And one debate point that is stuck in their head is Tulsi Gabbard. The moment that was in 2019, right, where she really landed a number of punches against Vice President Harris, talking about her record as a prosecutor. They want to avoid that moment, even though you would think that they're thinking a lot about the debate that knocked the president out. They're really thinking about the Tulsi Gabbard moment and trying to make sure that they avoid that. So they're trying to give her information, trying to make sure that she is sort of ready to counterpunch when Donald Trump punches her.
Yeah, you make really good points about the Biden folks have been so frustrated because they feel obviously his performance was dismal and ultimately forced him out of the race. They feel like had the focus been on Donald Trump, that would have been a big problem for him there. Black jobs, among other sentences that came out of the course of that conversation. Garrett, I want to ask you, when we talk about policy issues right now, there's one above all others where Donald Trump really feels like he is struggling to come up with some statement that will stick, or at least that he will stick to. This is abortion rights right now. One moment he says that, he supports what's going on in Florida. The next moment he does it, back and forth day by day. Why has this been such a problem for Donald Trump, and how problematic is this issue that he's privately acknowledged is an issue for him?
Yeah, the inconsistency is consistent here for Donald Trump. I mean, this is part of the problem. In his time as a public figure, he has taken every conceivable position on abortion, from being staunchly, in his own words, pro-choice back in the day to abruptly rebranding himself as an opponent of abortion rights when he first started running for office. His own personal views fall, I believe, somewhere in between what's on Florida's ballot and what Florida is currently doing. He's floated the idea of restrictions on abortion that fall somewhere in the middle with exceptions. That's not the choice that's presented to him, and it's not an issue in which he feels particularly comfortable talking. His campaign, frankly, just wants this to go away. Yeah. They thought that by if he sticks to this line about this is an issue for the states to decide, he'd ultimately stop getting asked about it. The problem is his home state is one of the states that's deciding, and every time he flip-flops on it, it's an invitation for reporters and people that might be at a town hall or moderators at a debate to ask him to refine his views on it all the more.
Well, it feels like the IVF comments that he said to our team only a couple of days ago was like an effort to throw something out there in hopes that would distract from the entire topic here. Ashley, I want to ask you, the last debate as this country witnessed, as the world witnessed, changed the race in ways we never could have anticipated. How much does this debate matter for both candidates? The Harris aides say that she has the most to gain because voters, in their view, are still getting a close-up look at her.
Look, it matters tremendously. Debates are one of the few moments where you can count on larger parts of the nation than usual paying attention to politics. That's especially true in an election like this, where at least when it was Trump and Biden at the top of the ticket, you had a lot of these double haters who didn't like either option. And when you don't like either option, you tune out. So for someone like Vice President Harris, who really needs to introduce herself, and that's both a positive and a negative. Her team in many ways is looking at the upside. She has the chance to introduce herself sort of anew, not as an incumbent, not as someone tied to the Biden-Harris policies, but she needs to introduce herself, and this will be a moment when all eyes are on her. And as Yamiche was saying, it is also a moment where if the debate goes the way the Harris-Wallace campaign is hoping, where they may be able to overcome a little bit of that Trump amnesia we've all talked about, right? And remind the nation what it is, the chaos, the bullying, the crude comments, the anger, the general unhingedness, the chaos of Donald Trump. Remind them of what they don't like. And the last thing I will say is Donald Trump, in certain ways, when he was running against Joe Biden, there's a sense among Democratic strategists that he made this all about age and sort of ability and agility, mental acuity to do the job. And now he still has to live in that box as the older candidate. And so if that's something they can tease out, that would also be considered a win for the Harris campaign.
Yeah, Kamala Harris casting herself as a change agent, basically saying that Americans are exhausted by Donald Trump just because he's been in the headlines for so long, even if he hasn't been in the White House. Now, Yamiche Alcindor, Garrett Haake, Ashley Parker, appreciate all of you being here. And coming up next, how the growing gender gap between Harris and Trump could play out with voters this November. You're watching Andrea Mitchell Reports. This is MSNBC.
One way to avoid expensive car repair bills is to be a race car driver. The other is endurance.
Endurance saved me more than $7,000.
Without Endurance, breakdowns can cost thousands. With Endurance, you're covered.
Endurance covers nearly every car on the road. Plus,
you pick the mechanic you trust.
Act now for $300 off any plan, plus a year of elite benefits and a 30-day money-back guarantee.
Call 1-877-204-0811.
Now.
Will you?
What did you do?
I got a little design help.
I'm in sweats, Derek. It's perfect. And I'm in sweatpants.
Saturday, September 7th, it's MSNBC Live Democracy 2024, our premier live audience event with your favorite MSNBC hosts. Visit msnbc.com/democracy2024 to buy your tickets.
Vice President Kamala Harris is riding a wave of momentum.
It's easy to see why he appealed to Donald Trump. It's a little bit more challenging to understand how he is supposed to appeal to a general election electorate.
For Democrats, it is going to be about closing the margins in some of these spaces and places.
The vice president abroad is considered someone who has a soft touch but tough talk.
There are people that want what Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are selling.
Don't miss the weekends, Saturday and Sunday mornings at 8
on MSNBC.
With just 9 weeks to go until Election Day, we are in the unofficial home stretch of a presidential race that right now seems to be effectively a dead heat. And joining us to break down the numbers, NBC News national political correspondent Steve Kornacki. He is at the big board. All right, Steve, here we go. 2 months to go, basically. Just days from the first ballots going out. Those absentee ballots get sent out this Friday in North Carolina. Where do things stand at this moment?
Yeah, Peter, here we go. Indeed, national polling average right now. Recent major national polls, it's Harris by 3 points over Trump. Now, if you're a Democrat, obviously you're happy that your candidate is leading. You're also happy because this is an improvement from where the race stood for Democrats when Joe Biden was their candidate. He had basically trailed Donald Trump all year. But if you're a Republican looking at this poll average coming out of Labor Day, you could take some solace, too, because Donald Trump is no stranger to this position, being behind come Labor Day in a presidential election. Back in 2016, on average, he was down by 5 points against Hillary Clinton coming out of Labor Day. Of course, Trump won in 2016. And in 2020, on average, he was trailing Joe Biden by an even wider margin. And yet, he didn't come back to win, but he came back to come extremely close, Trump did, in the Electoral College. So certainly, from Trump's standpoint here, 3 points, to be behind 3 points, in some ways, that might look a little better than the last 2 times did.
Steve Kornacki, we're just getting going. Couple months to go now. We'll keep checking in with you for any updates along the way. Steve Kornacki, thank you very much. I want to get right to our panel if we can. And joining me is Susan Page, Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today. Jim Messina, former campaign manager for Barack Obama's 2012 campaign, and Susan Del Percio, a Republican strategist. Jim, let's get to you out of the gates here. The poll's still pretty tight within the margin of error, effectively. A little bit striking for some Democrats who may be overly enthusiastic. Harris folks fear right now that it's still less than the advantage that both Biden had in 2020 and Clinton had in 2016. Harris, though, has kept pace with Trump by riding this wave of enthusiasm. In this morning Political Playbook, they quoted Donna Brazile saying what happens with a movement is they don't wait for the campaign high command to send them buttons and posters. They do it themselves. They don't wait for the campaign to organize rallies. They do it themselves. The vice president has a movement behind her and can use it to her advantage. I don't want to ask you whether this is a movement now or not, but I do want to ask you what the biggest obstacles you think she faces right now and how she needs to really keep her focus going forward.
Well, Peter, you mentioned the most important word to me, which is enthusiasm. The number that I track every day, the number that I think really is the only number that matters, is whose voters are most enthusiastic. And right now, you're seeing just an explosion for the Democrats. It's the highest we've seen since 2008 and Barack Obama. And that is incredibly important because enthusiasm means your voters will vote, they'll persuade their friends, and they'll give you a whole bunch of money, which is exactly what you're seeing. You know, the problem for Harris, and Kornacki laid this out perfectly, is just Donald Trump has always underperformed in polling. There's a lot of people who won't tell a pollster they're for him, and yet they'll vote for him on Election Day. So it's why I think all the polls are garbage, and why I think this first debate is so important. This debate really can be a mover of a whole bunch of sentiment. And as you said earlier, absentee ballots in North Carolina go out on Friday. People start voting in Pennsylvania in 13 days. So this debate is absolutely the biggest thing in front of both campaigns, and Donald Trump is the best counterpuncher I've seen in American politics. And the question is, you know, can he get to Kamala Harris and begin to define her in a way that his campaign has not been able to?
Well, Jim, you make a good point there, right? Like they've been trying to define her, but without real success right now, and that's evidence of sort of the all different directions he's gone in terms of his criticisms. Even the nicknames he's floated have been up in the air until really appears to have settled on one that hasn't stuck too much to this point. Susan, to you, Jim wisely just mentioned Pennsylvania. The early voting there starts September 16th. That's not even 2 weeks away. So who has the advantage in your view with those early voters, which is a significant number? You know, Mr. Trump recently called mail-in voting, his word, I think, was terrible, right? Despite the campaign's new Swamp the Vote program aimed at specifically at increasing mail-in voting.
When it comes to mail-in voting, whether it's Pennsylvania or any other state, Vice President Harris has the advantage. Democrats have the advantage, which is so counter to how it used to be, because I remember 30 years ago, it was when we started vote by mail campaigns throughout the country. It really changed things for Republicans. But when you look at the organization, that is what's really important. The organization that the Harris campaign has on the ground, and it inherited from Biden-Harris, is the ballgame when it comes to early voting.
Susan Page, let me ask you two Susans here, make sure we get them correct for the sake of this conversation. USA Today has new polling out right now, and it's particularly striking as it relates to the gender gap. It shows Harris leading among women by 21 points. Trump leads among men by 13 points. That is obviously a significant gap. Voter turnout for women in this country typically outpaces men. What are your biggest takeaways about those numbers and where things stand right now?
Well, first of all, a 34-point gender gap is something we've never seen before. And if that holds, that would be really extraordinary sign of the division in our country between men and women. We had a gender gap in our previous USA Today Suffolk poll in late June when Biden was still on the ticket, but it was nowhere the size of this. And what Kamala Harris has done is build support among women, especially among white women, in a way that Joe Biden was struggling to do. So this is a sign, I think, of real strength if she can hold on to it. And as Jim was saying, enthusiasm is the number one thing to watch. When it comes to enthusiasm, our survey shows Harris voters are now more enthusiastic than Trump voters, 68% to 60% expressing high enthusiasm. That is a real switch from when Biden was Democratic nominee.
Susan, let's stick with this poll for a moment. 42% of Trump supporters polled say they do not think the ballots will be counted accurately. 27% say they won't accept the results if Trump loses. Mr. Trump has sort of amplified this message. It's been a major talking point for him. But is there a risk that this could backfire? If 42% don't believe the ballots will be counted accurately, could that translate into lower voter turnout among some of those Trump Republicans?
Yeah, absolutely. And people and Republicans in Georgia think this kind of rhetoric hurt them in their special Senate elections last time around. So, yes, it can have an effect if people do not trust the election to be fair. Why participate in it? And it also can set up a landscape that is very dangerous after the election is over if one side or the other refuses to accept the results as legitimate.
Jim, the Harris campaign put out a new ad blitz, spending a ton of money, focusing on the economy in particular. Obviously, that's a major priority for American voters. Mr. Trump has been less focused on policy. Obviously, a lot of the attacks have been sort of personality driven. It's a frustration of those close to him. What do you expect we're going to hear from her in that debate? Obviously, a lot of eyeballs, as we've said, are going to be focused there, including, as we've noted, a lot of people who are still sort of making up their mind in this race. It's a small sliver, but it could be determinative.
Yeah, look, I want her to do exactly what she did at her DNC speech a couple weeks ago, Peter. I want her to look at the country and say, this is where I'm going to take you. I have a very clear economic plan. Life will be better. When I was running President Obama's campaign, Bill Clinton would wake me up in the middle of the night once a month to tell me that all presidential elections are always about the future. And right now, she's winning that future frame in part because of her focus on the economy. And so I just want her to do exactly what she's been doing and not fall for Trump's counterattacks, because he's going to come at her with everything he has.
You can only imagine that middle of the night call. The President of the United States is waiting to speak to you. Those make things a little bit interesting. We appreciate it. Susan Del Percio, Susan Page, Jim Messina, I appreciate all you being with us here. And coming up next, by the way, we're going to speak to the Attorney General in Michigan, how that state's AG is preparing for Election Day as she campaigns for Kamala Harris and against Project 2025. Dana Nessel joins us next. You're watching Andrea Mitchell Reports. We're live here on MSNBC.
Send those pics in. What we running with today? You already know.
Joe, Trav is about to go off tonight.
Facts. That's the play. Run it, and I'll see y'all tonight. Might have to run that. I told y'all to run that. Come on now. You said it. Come on. You said it.
Download the PrizePicks app today. Enter $5 and get $50 instantly. PrizePicks, run your game.
Here's your coffee.
Oh, best intern ever.
Oh, nice. You use Fiverr. Working on anything big? A marketing campaign? Product launch?
New towel design for the summer swag.
Are we sure we're making the best use of our talent?
Can I get some oat milk?
Sometimes great talent is right under your nose.
What's your name again?
I want to say Barbara.
Did you know you can save with GoodRx, even if you have insurance?
You know, I thought my prescription was covered until it wasn't, but GoodRx helps with that.
I work for myself, so I buy my own insurance. And I still check GoodRx.
I'm on Medicare. I check GoodRx because it can beat my copay. Who wouldn't like that?
Even if you have insurance, GoodRx can help you save.
Okay, we'll see you next time.
Another good reason to check GoodRx.
You know, I usually just do takeout, but I'm trying to be more of an adult, learn how to actually cook. HelloFresh makes it so much easier to do.
I just love that HelloFresh just brings it all to me. Everything is portioned out.
Using their recipe cards makes it super approachable and really easy. It's so nice to not even think about what I need to cook for dinner. These firecracker meatballs are amazing. HelloFresh has 50 options to choose from each week.
We can pause anytime we want.
It's crazy that HelloFresh has everything that we've been craving.
HelloFresh is giving you 10 free meals just for signing up.
I'm Anya's indecision. I thought we were good. Like, with home projects, I used to make sure she got so twisted around, she wasn't even sure where to start. But Thumbtack changed her. With all the plans and guides and reminders, Anya's getting stuff done. And I'm getting ghosted.
Indecision doesn't live here. You do. Take care of your home with Thumbtack. Download the app today.
At Chomps, we create snacks for people who are hungry to get the most out of life, who only accept the highest quality. Because real life demands real ingredients. We make snacks that don't take shortcuts, with grass-fed and finished beef, 0 sugar, and up to 12 grams of protein. When life challenges you, take bigger bites. Chomps, take bigger bites.
I am embarrassed to say this, but I've been using deodorant on my armpits for the past 40 years. And yet anytime I noticed odor anywhere else, I thought I needed a second shower, I wasn't clean, or there was something wrong with me. And then my gynecologist told me about Lumi. It's a whole body deodorant for pits, feet, and privates that controls odor anywhere and everywhere on your body. I tried it and I noticed a difference right away. Everywhere. You won't realize the body odor you've just been living with until you try Lumi and it's gone. Go to LumiDeo.com to build your customized bundle today.
Never clean your gutters again with LeafGuard. LeafGuard's seamless design keeps leaves, pests, and sediment out while directing water away from your home, giving you peace of mind that your home and family are protected from water damage with the industry's premier maintenance-free gutter system. Call 844-6LeafGuard right now for a free estimate and save 20% plus $500 off your purchase and installation. LeafGuard. Get it today, protected for life.
Now let's go to Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz.
These guys are just weird. Robber barons like J.D. Vance and Donald Trump gutted the Midwest.
Your first reaction to the choice of Tim Walz?
Democrats were deflated. Now, game is on.
I think this race is going to get even more interesting.
Morning Joe, weekdays from 6 to 10 on MSNBC.
Vice President Kamala Harris is making a play to shore up the blue wall, as it's called this week. In a state where polls show it is a real toss-up, Harris and Trump are statistically neck and neck in critical Michigan. A new Bloomberg Morning Consult poll gives Harris the slight edge. You see there 2 points. That is within the margin of error. While a poll from Epic MRA shows that Harris is down just a point, down by 1 percentage point there, is still within the margin of error. She spent Labor Day courting Michigan's labor force, vowing to be a warrior for unions.
Everywhere I go, I tell people, look, you may not be a union member. You better thank a union member. For the 5-day work week, you better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. You better thank a union member for vacation time.
And joining me now is Michigan's Attorney General, Dana Nessel. General Nessel, I appreciate your being here. It strikes me that that epic MRA poll, the second one we showed here, shows that 7% of Michigan voters could not say for sure who they are voting for. You know these things are decided on the margins. That is a lot of voters. You made your own case to voters on stage at the DNC last month. How does Kamala Harris win Michigan among the tightest of the blue wall states?
Honestly, three things: turnout, turnout, and turnout. Right? While we are traditionally a purple state, the truth is when we have a high turnout, Democrats win. When we have a low turnout, Republicans win.
So what do you anticipate? Are you seeing the energy for there to be a high turnout in that state? Obviously, just anecdotally, I remember covering President Biden when I was in places like Michigan. There weren't a lot of signs around. Now you're seeing a lot of signs pop up, just a sort of organic evidence that there is a new sense of momentum for her.
Oh, yeah. This is the most excitement and enthusiasm and energy that I've seen from the Democratic Party in a very long time. But with that, because it is expected to be such a close race, we're seeing a lot of chicanery on the part of the RNC and on behalf of the state Republican Party. So, for instance, you know, there's this effort, firstly, to ensure that Cornel West remains on the ballot. And what people don't know about that is a Republican effort, right? One of his attorneys actually was a consultant for Donald Trump, is a member of the Republican National Lawyers Association, is a well-known lawyer in Michigan who advocated against marriage equality, against affirmative action, and against abortion rights. He's Cornel West's attorney. On the other hand, you see this effort now to illegally remove RFK Jr. from the ballot, even though the law is plain as day. RFK Jr. wanted to be nominated by the Natural Law Party. He was. That was certified. And the law expressly says that he cannot now be removed from the ballot, but they still have filed a frivolous lawsuit. And I think it's because a lot of people know that it is likely to be a close election. And they either want to draw, voters to one candidate or draw them away from another.
Can I ask you about another topic that obviously has got a lot of attention nationally, and it relates specifically to Michigan? We saw the kidnapping attempt focused on your state's governor, the Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer there. How concerned are you about safety and violence in and around Election Day? And even the conversation about it, there is some fear, could sort of dilute or suppress turnout.
Well, I'm not going to say that we aren't concerned. We are, but that's why we are working so hard to be prepared. And first of all, nobody should worry about their own personal safety. First of all, we have 9 days of early voting, and we have also no reason absentee voting. So anybody can vote from the privacy of their own home. They don't even have to go into the polls. But we are focusing on making sure that the processes are protected. So whether that is election workers, and we've increased penalties for even threatening an election worker, or making certain that whether it's clerks, whether you're talking about county board of canvasser members, state board of canvasser members, all the way up, that people are properly protected, and that, we're ensuring that we're going to have a safe election, but one, of course, that is fair and accurate as well.
Last question that I have time for you right now. Specifically, I want to ask you about what we have seen at a stop in Michigan on Friday. Donald Trump said that he's going to vote against reproductive rights protections in Florida. That's his home state. Michigan, as you know, enshrined protections into law 2 years ago. Is that enough to protect women's access to abortion care in your state?
Not if Donald Trump is reelected, and certainly not if he also has Congress to support him. We know that part of Project 2025, which is the playbook for Donald Trump and the Republicans, is a national abortion ban. So if that happens, of course, that will supersede our state constitution that we worked so hard to amend to include not just abortion rights, but of course, birth control, fertility treatments like IVF. We know all of that is going to be gone and out the window. And states like mine, will be helpless in the face of another Donald Trump presidency.
Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel, it is always a pleasure to have you here. We appreciate your perspective. Thank you so much. And coming up next here on MSNBC, a Russian missile strike on a Ukrainian military academy near a hospital kills dozens. An NBC News exclusive interview with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is next. Richard Engel joins us. You're watching Andrea Mitchell Reports on MSNBC.
When the details take precedence, and each piece is crafted with intention, the rest falls perfectly into place. We strip away everything but the essential, finding sophistication in simplicity. And what we're left with are thoughtful bedrooms for modern living. Thuma.
Heather likes things smooth. So when she had a rough time getting a weight loss appointment, she came to us. Through Ro, she connected with a provider online and got a GLP-1 prescription. Now she's on her way to losing 20% of her weight in a year with diet and exercise. Now that's smooth. We got you, Heather. See if you qualify at ro.co/TV.
We've had some great times together, but I need to let you go. And so, babe, it's done. I just
sold my car to Carvana! Woo!
No, even easier. I just entered my license plate and
answered a few questions. Bam!
I'm dropping off and getting paid today.
Offer was incredible! Carvana! How convenient is that? How convenient is
Oh, that's Dave.
Thanks for choosing Carvana. Here's your check.
Thanks. Sell your car today and get paid the same day with Carvana.
When my hair started to thin, I thought, am I gonna have any hair left?
After I gave birth, my hair wasn't even thin, it was gone.
When I spoke to my dermatologist, he immediately pointed me in the direction of Nutrafol.
It's 100% drug-free and clinically tested.
Within 3 months, my hair was fuller.
It's longer, it's so much thicker.
I had more scalp coverage.
It was so nice to be noticed for my hair after hiding it for so many years.
Start your hair growth journey at Nutrafol.com.
One of the things I like about what I get to do is that each day is pretty unique. I might find out that there's not a lot of new numbers in the world today, and so today is going to be a day I'm going to spend researching. The only way to really be prepared is to get it all in my brain ahead of time.
back now live on MSNBC. More than 50 people were killed today. Another 200 plus injured in one of the single deadliest Russian missile strikes on Ukraine since the beginning of this war. This attack on a military training site, a nearby hospital in the central city of Poltava. You can see the sides of the buildings there literally blown off. And joining me now from Kyiv is NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel, who just spoke with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Richard, tell us more as you can about this attack and your conversation.
So this attack happened, or word of this attack happened, as we were setting up for the interview with President Zelensky. So the first question to him was, what more information could he share? What happened in the city of Poltava, which is a lovely historic city in the northern part of eastern Ukraine, just across the Russian border from an area of Russia that has now been occupied by Ukraine. So perhaps this was Russia sending a message, part of Russia's revenge against Ukraine for having occupied about roughly 500 square miles of Russian territory. And he described it as a tragedy, President Zelensky did. He said that it was a ballistic missile attack, that the missiles, because they weren't traveling a great distance, they fly at a tremendous speed. There was only a few minutes of lag time between when the missiles were launched, when the air raid sirens went off, and when people were able to find shelter. And he said that quick time from blast to explosion was what caused it to be so devastating in this case, and that many people were killed as they were trying to make their way to the bomb shelters. But I would say the larger part of our conversation was focused about this very dramatic, still very secretive move that Ukraine did last month when Ukrainian forces, in a surprise attack, launched an incursion into Russia, capturing territory, flipping the script on this war. And I can tell you, even here in Ukraine, many people on the streets are excited about that. It finally changed the narrative. It was a big morale boost for the population, for the military. But it has left people scratching their heads as they ask, which we asked President Zelensky, okay, now what? What's next? Now you've captured this territory in Russia. So the big question is, what do you plan to do with it?
Нам не потрібна російська територія. Я це завжди.
We don't need the Russian territory. Our operation is aimed to restore our territorial integrity. We capture Russian troops to replace them with the Ukrainian. We tell them, we need our military soldiers in exchange with the Russian ones. The same attitude is to the territories. We don't need their land.
Is the plan to take more territory?
I will not tell you. Sorry, I can't speak about it. It's like the beginning of this Kursk operation. With all respect, I can't speak about it. I think that the success is very close to surprise.
But conceptually, you have this territory now. You say you don't want to keep it long term.
Conceptually, we will hold it. Conceptually, we will hold it.
So that's a major headline that I think will resonate around the world, that Ukraine plans to indefinitely hold this period, this territory in Russia, doesn't want to keep it forever, doesn't want to make it part of Ukraine, but is holding it potentially for leverage, potentially to trade until the end of the conflict, or at least a time when Ukraine deems it is no longer necessary to hold. It is a very big responsibility, and the question many people are asking in this country is, at what cost does it come? Yes, it embarrassed Vladimir Putin. Yes, it exposed great Russian weakness. But can Ukraine, does it have enough weapons, does it have enough force to hold a large portion of Russian territory and continue to defend the front lines and cities like Poltava that were hit today? Can it do both? And President Zelensky insists that he can. We will see.
Of course, a major conversation this campaign season is the future efforts to support Ukraine.
in a doctor's office.
There's a way that I can communicate with patients now in a way I never could before. They have their own EKG in their pocket.
With KardioMobile, you can take a medical-grade EKG in just 30 seconds from anywhere. KardioMobile is proven to detect atrial fibrillation, one of the leading causes of stroke. And it's the only personal EKG that's FDA cleared to detect normal heart rhythm, bradycardia, and tachycardia.
Having KardioMobile, it's a peace of mind for me.
Because you can't see your cardiologist every day, but you can see your KardioMobile every day.
Checking your heart anytime, anywhere has never been easier. And KardioMobile is now HSA, FSA eligible. Get KardioMobile today for just $79 at Kardia.com or Amazon.
Ugh, when is my allergy spray gonna kick in?
You need Astapro.
Astapro?
It's faster, bro. 8 times faster than Flonase.
It's faster, bro.
It's faster, bro. It's faster, bro.
It's mom to you.
Astapro starts working in 30 minutes. Astapro and go.
The cell provider that was breached has my social from the credit check.
75% of Americans have had their social security number exposed due to recent data breaches. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points for identity theft.
Doctors recommend Nicolle stool softener for gentle, dependable relief from constipation. It's so gentle, doctors even recommend it during pregnancy and after surgery. Nicolle increases water in the stool, making it softer so it's easier to go. No harsh laxatives, cramping, or straining. Nicolle.
Looking for a way to stretch the dollar? With Insurify, you can cut your car insurance bill in half. Scroll through dozens of prices and tap to switch online. That's it. No phone calls and no wasted time. Go to Insurify and save today.
Our right to reproductive health care is being stolen from us.
I can't believe this is the world we live in, where we're losing the freedom to control our own bodies.
We need your support now more than ever. Go online, call, or scan this code with your $19 monthly gift, and we'll send you this Care No Matter What t-shirt.
It is your right to have safe health care. That's it.
Go online, call, or scan right now.
I have a structured settlement and I need cash now. Call J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now.
I have an annuity, but I need cash now.
Call J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now.
It's your money. Use it when you need it.
Call J.G. Wentworth.
Call 877-CASH now to get a $100 gift card for a free quote.
We need a small business loan fast.
I got this. Loan Falcon!
There's a better way to get a fast small business loan. Go to OnDeck.com, and if approved, get your funds as soon as the same day. Your loan is on deck.
Want the effects of Viagra, but faster? Meet Rose Sparks. They contain sildenafil and tadalafil, but Sparks dissolve under the tongue. Dissolvables work faster than old school pills. Connect with a medical provider at ro.co/sparks.
Good day, I'm Chris Jansing, live at MSNBC headquarters in New York City. Expect the unexpected. As the presidential race enters its stretch run, new developments in multiple wars overseas threaten to throw a curveball into the campaign. Will Kamala Harris's role in this White House help bolster her chances to win in November or backfire instead? Plus, will it be a boys versus girls election come November? A new poll shows Kamala Harris stretching her lead with female voters and trying to win over even more with her new bus tour focused on reproductive rights. Does Donald Trump have a plan to try to win them back? Plus, a stunning new indictment accuses a former top aide to New York Governor Kathy Hochul of secretly working for the Chinese government. Authorities say the alleged scheme was designed to promote China's communist agenda in exchange for millions of dollars in kickbacks. The latest on the charges and the arraignment coming up. But we start with new eruptions of unrest and violence in Israel and Ukraine on the first day of the final push toward November, adding a complex new dimension to a presidential election that so far has been mostly focused on domestic concerns. In Israel, dozens of protests are being held for a third straight day as thousands vent their grief. Look at the size of this crowd.